The Holocaust stands as one of history's darkest and most important chapters, a tragedy that continues to haunt the conscience of humanity. Between 1933 and 1945, the Nazis, led by Adolf Hitler, orchestrated a systematic campaign of persecution and murder, fueled by a toxic ideology of hatred and supremacy. Their primary targets were the Jewish people. 6 million men, women, and children were killed in a deliberate genocide, their lives extinguished in ghettos, camps, and killing fields. The Hebrew word for this catastrophe is Shoah, a term that captures a horror beyond words, a loss that echoes through generations. But Jews were not the only victims. The Nazis targeted Roma, people with disabilities, and countless others deemed undesirable by their regime. Poles, Soviet prisoners, political opponents, Jehovah's Witnesses, and homosexuals were also persecuted, imprisoned, and murdered in staggering numbers. The Nazi regime, its collaborators, and many ordinary citizens either participated in or ignored these atrocities, allowing evil to flourish in silence and complicity. The victims were ordinary people, shopkeepers, teachers, mothers, whose only crime was their identity or beliefs. Fathers, sons, and daughters, entire families, whose lives were destroyed by hatred and indifference. They lived in cities and villages across Europe, with hopes and dreams like anyone else, building communities and cherishing traditions. This script is a journey into that dark time, to explain what happened, why it happened, and what it means for us today as we strive to learn from the past. We'll explore the Nazis' rise to power, the spread of their hateful propaganda, and the machinery of oppression they built, their steps to isolate and dehumanize, stripping millions of their rights, dignity, and humanity. The shift to mass murder, carried out with chilling efficiency, left scars that can never fully heal, and the bravery of those who resisted, risking everything to save lives, preserve hope, and fight back against tyranny. It's a painful story, but one that must be told, remembered, and passed on to future generations. In understanding history's darkest chapter, we find reasons to build a more compassionate, just, and vigilant future, one where such horrors are never repeated, and we promise, never again. This is our collective responsibility and our hope. The Holocaust began not with violence, but with dangerous ideas rooted in centuries of anti-Semitism. The Nazis twisted old prejudices into a new, deadly ideology, claiming Germans were a master race and Jews a corrupting threat. Hitler blamed Jews for Germany's defeat in World War I and its economic woes, fueling resentment and fear. Promising to restore Germany's greatness, Hitler's propaganda preyed on a desperate nation. In 1933, Hitler became chancellor, quickly dismantling democracy and establishing a police state. Nazi ideology became law, taught in schools and broadcast everywhere, silencing opposition. The Nazis saw Jews not as people, but as a biological threat to be eradicated. This dehumanizing belief justified stripping millions of their rights, property, and lives. The Holocaust was built on this foundation of hate. It began with words and ended in unimaginable violence. Once in power, the Nazis moved quickly to isolate Jews from German society, using both propaganda and new laws to turn neighbors into strangers. The persecution began with a nationwide boycott of Jewish businesses in 1933, enforced by Nazi stormtroopers who stood guard outside shops, intimidating customers and owners alike. Book burnings soon followed, targeting works by Jewish and un-German authors. These public spectacles were meant to erase free thought and silence voices of dissent, sending a chilling message to all of Germany. In 1935, the Nuremberg laws stripped Jews of citizenship and banned relationships with non-Jews, defining Jewishness by ancestry and making discrimination a matter of law. These laws built a legal wall, making discrimination state policy and embedding anti-Semitism into every aspect of daily life. Over time, hundreds of new laws pushed Jews further to the margins, banning them from jobs, schools, and public spaces. Children were expelled from classrooms, and families were barred from parks, theaters, and even hospitals. Life became unbearable, but most countries refused to accept Jewish refugees, trapping them in a tightening net of fear and uncertainty, with few options for escape. The Nazis' goal was clear: to make Jews disappear from German life, erasing their presence from neighborhoods, businesses, and communities. The world's indifference left millions with nowhere to turn. International conferences failed to offer real help, and borders remained closed. The stage was set for even more radical measures as Nazi officials meticulously planned the next steps in their campaign of exclusion. The machinery of exclusion was now in place, with checkpoints, identity papers, and yellow stars marking Jews wherever they went. Fear and isolation became daily reality as Jewish families faced an uncertain future, cut off from the world around them. In November 1938, Nazi persecution exploded into violence during Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. Using the murder of a German diplomat as a pretext, the Nazis unleashed a coordinated attack on Jewish communities. Synagogues burned, businesses and homes were destroyed, and the streets were littered with shattered glass. Police and firefighters were ordered to stand by, intervening only to protect non-Jewish property. 91 Jews were murdered, and thousands more were beaten or terrorized. Over 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and sent to concentration camps. The Jewish community was forced to pay for the destruction. Kristallnacht marked a turning point. Nazi policy shifted from discrimination to open violence. Any illusion of safety for Jews in Germany was shattered. The path to genocide was now unmistakable. The world watched, but did little. After Kristallnacht and the outbreak of World War II, Nazi policy turned from persecution to extermination. The final solution was born, a plan for the systematic murder of every Jew in Europe. Mobile killing squads, the Einsatzgruppen, massacred over 1 million Jews in mass shootings. The Nazis built extermination camps like Auschwitz and Treblinka, designed solely for mass murder. Jews from across Europe were deported in cattle cars, most sent directly to their deaths. Victims were told they were taking showers but were gassed with Zyklon B. This industrialized killing claimed thousands of lives each day. The Nazis' ideology of hate became a horrifying reality. The Nazis created a vast network of camps, over 44,000 across Europe. Prisoners lost everything, their names, possessions, and dignity. Life in the camps was a daily struggle for survival amid starvation, disease, and brutality. Overcrowded barracks, meager rations, and rampant illness made death a constant presence. Forced labor was central. Prisoners worked to exhaustion, and those too weak were killed. The system was designed for extermination through work. Yet even in these conditions, prisoners found ways to resist dehumanization. They shared food, cared for the sick, whispered prayers, and formed bonds of solidarity. Small acts of kindness became acts of defiance. The human spirit endured, even in the heart of darkness. Survival itself was resistance. Despite overwhelming odds, Jews and other victims resisted the Nazis in countless ways. In ghettos, people organized secret schools, underground newspapers, and documented Nazi crimes. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising saw young fighters hold off the German army for nearly a month, choosing to die on their own terms. Thousands joined partisans, sabotaging Nazi operations and fighting for survival. Even in death camps, prisoners revolted. At Treblinka, Sobibor, and Auschwitz, they fought back and smuggled out evidence. These acts of resistance, large and small, showed extraordinary courage. Defiance took many forms, from armed struggle to preserving dignity and hope. The will to resist was never extinguished. As Allied forces advanced in 1945, they liberated the camps and uncovered the full horror of the Holocaust. Soldiers found skeletal survivors, mass graves, and evidence of industrialized murder. For survivors, liberation brought new challenges. Many were alone, sick, and without homes. Displaced persons camps became temporary refuges as survivors sought new lives in places like the US and Israel. The world responded with the Nuremberg trials, holding Nazi leaders accountable for crimes against humanity. These trials set new standards for justice and human rights. The Holocaust reshaped international law and our understanding of evil. Europe's Jewish communities were decimated and the trauma endured for generations. Humanity was forced to confront its capacity for cruelty and its responsibility to prevent it. The world after Auschwitz could never be the same. Today, more than 80 years later, remembering the Holocaust remains not only urgent but essential for the future of humanity. The echoes of that tragedy still shape our world, reminding us of the fragility of peace and the dangers of forgetting. We honor the 6 million Jews and millions of others who were murdered, not as numbers, but as individuals with lives, families, and dreams that were brutally cut short. Each face in these photographs tells a story of hope, love, and loss. Forgetting would grant the Nazis a final victory. Remembering affirms our shared humanity and our commitment to never let such evil take root again. Every act of remembrance is a stand against hatred. The Holocaust warns us of the dangers of unchecked hatred, bigotry, and the consequences of silence in the face of injustice. It shows how ordinary people can be swept up in cruelty when prejudice is allowed to flourish. Its lessons help us recognize and resist intolerance and injustice in our own time. Education and awareness are powerful tools to prevent history from repeating itself. The trauma endures for survivors and their families, echoing through generations. Anti-Semitism and hatred still threaten communities worldwide, making remembrance and vigilance more important than ever. Legal battles and debates over memory continue, reminding us that the fight for justice is ongoing. The pursuit of accountability and truth is a responsibility we all share. The stories of survivors, rescuers, and resistors inspire us to act with courage and compassion. Their bravery in the darkest times lights the way for future generations. Learning this history is not to despair, but to build a better world. By understanding the past, we empower ourselves to create a future rooted in respect and dignity for all. We must be vigilant, speak out against hatred, and value every human life. Our actions today shape the world of tomorrow. The memory of the Holocaust is a sacred trust, a promise passed from one generation to the next. Never again, for anyone, anywhere,